And breaking news from Capitol Hill, the committee investigating the Capitol attack just released its contempt report to hold former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in contempt of Congress. Joining me now for the latest NBC News reporter Julie Sirkin is in Washington with more. Julie, tell us what is in this report.
Yeah, Alicia, the committee, the January 6th Select Committee investigating the attack on the Capitol just dropped this 51-page report within the last couple of minutes or so, and there's a lot of information in here, and most of it coming from the thousands of pages of text and emails and documents that Mark Meadows himself actually turned over to the committee when he was still cooperating briefly in the last couple of weeks. There's a lot to get into here, but the biggest takeaway is the committee is saying, look, Meadows refused to provide documents that he himself produced to the committee and turned over, with his lawyer saying all these documents are not subject to the executive privilege that he is asserting for why he cannot testify before the committee. Remember, last week, he actually told the committee he's done cooperating, he's not appearing for his scheduled deposition, and the committee is going to vote on this contempt report tomorrow at 7 p.m. Some of the things it says in here, Meadows indicated in a January 5th email that the National Guard was on standby to, quote, protect pro-Trump people. You and I both know, as somebody who was in the building on January 6th, that it took a really long time for the National Guard to get there, for the president to mobilize all of the troops. Well, now this information shows that Meadows apparently said that the National Guard was ready to protect the supporters of the former president. It also says here that Meadows tried to connect Trump with state lawmakers to pressure them to overturn and object to the election results in their states. There's details where they tried to recruit the lawmakers to do so. Now, again, there's also things in here like a January 2nd call between Trump, state and federal officials to discuss overturning certain states' counting of electoral college results. And later, by the way, this also details that Meadows was the one who actually sent that John Eastman memo to the vice president's staff, telling him options, basically all unconstitutional, as to how the former vice president could object to election results on January 6th. I mean, there's a lot to get into here, but this, of course, was the last resort from the committee. They did not want to hold Meadows in contempt of Congress because we know with Steve Bannon, this process is lengthy, and it doesn't always mean, even if prosecuted by the Justice Department, that they will ultimately get the testimony they want. And they say in here that Meadows is a critical part of their investigation. And so they're holding this contempt vote tomorrow at 7 p.m. and the full House is set to vote on the contempt report, which we expect to be approved unanimously tomorrow as early as Tuesday. Alicia?
So, Julie, I did just ask my PA to print this document for me. I'm told it is 52 pages, so I do not expect you to have a deep and robust analysis on that just yet, given the rate at which we can all read and process this information. So I do want to ask you, do we know anything more? Can you clarify the timing of this?
Yeah, so all we know now, they have this report, and as you remember, we've seen this with Jeffrey Clark, we've seen this with Steve Bannon. It's kind of these steps that they have to take. They're trying to outline a timeline here in this 51-page report with all the information that Meadows willingly handed over to the committee, but they're still missing pieces here because as the committee went to have Mark Meadows elaborate on these things that he's handed over, he refused to do so, and they've tried to do this many times. You remember, he was first subpoenaed in that initial batch of subpoenas back at the end of September. So this has been almost a 3-month process that they've tried to get Mark Meadows in the room with them. He failed to appear for a scheduled deposition just this past Wednesday. And of course, we also know that Mark Meadows is suing the panel for the subpoena because he's claiming he's in, quote, an untenable position to defy his former boss, President Trump, or to face prosecution by the Justice Department.
So for those of you who are just joining the news this hour, the January 6th committee has released a report on its reasons for holding former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in criminal contempt. This is essentially, Julie, they're laying out the case for why they believe he should be held in criminal contempt.
Exactly. It's their job to prove why he should be held in criminal contempt. Of course, they're not the ones who actually prosecute him. That would be Biden's Justice Department. But basically what's going to happen is they have to release this 24 hours before the vote. Like I said, that's happening tomorrow at 7. We expect this to be a short and sweet process, as we've seen with Jeffrey Clark and Steve Bannon. The committee is going to meet. Liz Cheney, the vice chair, Benny Thompson, the chairman of the committee, are going to make their remarks. They're going to say essentially what this report says in a more succinct succinct manner why Mark Meadows should be referred to the Justice Department for contempt of Congress. Then that is expected to be approved unanimously, meaning all members on the committee, including both Republicans Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, are expected to vote for this report. And then on Tuesday, the full House could vote on this report and refer these charges. Speaker Nancy Pelosi would refer these charges to the Justice Department, where they can move to prosecute Mark Meadows.
Julie, you in your reporting out of this report, you said something, and I want to make sure that we underscore it, which is that this report accuses Meadows of contacting state election officials and encouraging investigations of fraud, even after such allegations have been dismissed by state and federal courts. We knew this. It's now part of this report. How do you think that changes the calculus moving forward?
I mean, look, that's why the committee wants to hear from Meadows so badly. That's why they gave him time and time again to comply and cooperate and to show up and answer questions that they have, because he's the one who turned over all of these documents, right? If his lawyer is claiming that he can assert executive privilege by not elaborating and answering the committee's questions on the very things that he turned over, well, they're like, what is under the executive privilege that you are asserting if you willingly handed over these texts and emails? I mean, some pretty bizarre stuff in here that is coming to light that Mark Meadows himself turned over.